short chats. See if Monique or somebody comes on. And I just did live at Round Grove Cemetery, which is where Harold the Orb is. And I did do a separate video with Harold the Orb and my son Ethan, just messing around and having fun because it is a 2-year-old's grave, which I have gotten SLS of him moving around and interacting with the things that I leave there, or interacting with me when I'm in the video while the SLS program's on, which means that the SLS will also show up on me, like the green lines, because my joints are being detected as well. So you'll see me with the green lines, like joints moving, with also, hi, Sean. Hi, whoever's viewing. But also the SLS will show Harold and his joint movements, and obviously without a body. Also, I've gotten him evidence of him on video as an orb, as a big orb during the daylight. And out of all the times I've been there, I've never seen an orb like that at any other grave. So Harold's at the Round Grove Cemetery, and Ethan and I handed out flowers for Mother's Day weekend. That was our visit for the holiday. I visit that cemetery every holiday, mainly to visit Harold, which is a 2-year-old. I did research him on a census, and he got on the census in 1900, 4 months before he died, and months before his sister was born, because in 1900 they did not document pregnancies. And so on the back of Harold's grave, his sister's name is engraved on it after she was born. So also, Harold's father did not marry his mother during the pregnancy. He married her after the pregnancy, which could be maybe Harold wasn't her husband's child. Maybe that's why he had married her so late, because Harold was born in 1898, which in the 1800s, it was uncommon for a man not to be married to a woman during a pregnancy. So it could have been that Harold was from another person, I think they originally came from Ohio, but regardless, it could be a child from someone in the United States, or possibly from the country they originally came from, because they both came from different countries. If you research further back, the further back you research, the less documentation, the less information you're going to get. There are a lot of things that people did not have columns to fill that information out. So they may have had only 3 questions that someone answers, but of course in 2023, which is the year now, we may have more questions than that, and the documentation from the 1800s and 1900s or before, we're really not going to get a lot of answers. So I only researched Harold because I had seen his orb. I did not get proof of him on SLS until this year, the end of 2022 or the beginning of 2023. I also have an EVP where Harold says, "I love you." And I'm having a conversation with Harold when he had screamed it out. So I do have EVP, SLS, and photographic evidence. I also have a video of him moving a wooden, no, what was it? Oh, it wasn't there when I visited today. It was a big, oh, it was one of those wire hearts that have the little foil designs around it. You know, like the foil pieces. They might be like pom-poms are attached all the way around the heart. And because I had got it right before Valentine's Day, I had put it out there. And in a video, you can see not a hand or a person, but you can see something moving the heart. So I do have a lot of evidence of him. Also, there's a shadow man, and his name is George Treasure. George Treasure has this flower bush that grows over him, so you can only see him part of the year. If you did not know there was a grave under there, you would only see a bush. Also, most cemeteries, if you see a bush and not a gravestone, you know, there's 90% chance that there is a gravestone under the bush, or under the bush, or the like bushy trees. Sometimes under them there's multiple graves. So I would be cautious of like wasps and stuff, but it is okay. There's nothing wrong with moving that bush to see a name or a year, or if you wanted to leave a flower or a coin or something like that, it is okay. It's not taboo. You shouldn't be superstitious. So the bushes, because a lot of people plant remembrance bushes or memorial bushes or trees. And if you planted bushes, we left toys for Harold as well, or the toys are with Harold are from us on his grave. But the bushes, so if you plant, or if you have a headstone and you plant two bushes around it, and let's just say, and most of the time when people get bushes or trees, it's already partially grown, you know, at least a few feet. So if you plant these bushes on both sides of the grave pretty close in the 1970s, by 2000, 30 years later, those bushes have overgrown, or either overgrown, or the roots have overgrown that, or raised up and pushed it up that gravestone or the multiple gravestones. This is why they get buried. And I'm not sure if some people intentionally do that, but I believe that most people don't realize that when they plant them so close, you know, these stones, they last hundreds of years. They will last hundreds of years. And when you plant plants that close, and they may not have an option because the plot area they buried it in may not have room. They may have to buy 2 or 3 plots in order to have that space. But I don't think a lot of people know that they're planting them too close. And then there's some graves that were from the 1800s or the early 1900s, and they planted a tree. And also, same thing, they planted it too close to their gravestone. And people don't just go around moving gravestones just because the tree overgrew it or pushed it up or something. So I have many videos of the trees, the roots literally growing over it like a blanket. The wood on the tree is growing over it. So, or like a glove or something like that. So that's all about trees. Also about superstition, there's I get comments all day, every day. A lot of them are positive, some are supportive. There's people who are confused about my videos. There's people, especially from other countries, that have different cultural beliefs, so their superstitions are unique to their culture, or they may have adopted superstitions from watching or reading something about cemeteries and what you may or may not do. But I do not see a standard set of rules across the board for cemeteries in general. It's usually people's individual opinions, and 9 times out of 10, when someone does certain comments, it's really superstition, but they're taking it as like a reality, like it's their actual thought or opinion, but it's just a superstition. So and that's the thing, that's how phobias are created. Is, well, some people are born like that or had trauma, but also another way that they're created is by believing something is real, like a superstition, or believing that a taboo or something is real. I'm not saying taboos are not real. I'm just saying you have to question their reality, or question if you're lying to yourself or being true to yourself, because believing something like that could give you phobia. It could cause fear, could give you major ego problems where you can't tell if something's legitimately dangerous or not, or a threat or not. And if you think something's dangerous or a threat enough, you're going to have negative responses or black and white thinking and just want to cut things off and things like that. So there are a lot of superstitious comments, like, for example, don't stand on their grave, or you're not supposed to stand on their grave. Well, the thing is, funerals are literally, well, not on the grave, but right there. And, you got lawn care and visitors and strangers. A lot of these people have these stones with artwork, photos, poems, and all kinds of things. And they're hoping, and the people that leave these there for their loved ones, these stones, are hoping that strangers will walk by and read that poem. There is a gravestone that says, tell me a joke. It's in St. Hope Cemetery in Champaign, Illinois, pretty much on a college campus. It's an Asian man. He looks Japanese, DeKalb. I don't think it's in DeKalb, Sean. I'm pretty sure St. Hope and the college is Champaign, Sean. I don't even remember what college that was. Oh, DeKalb County, maybe, but it's not DeKalb the city. So, but anyway, there's an Asian guy, and on his grave it says, tell me a joke. So I did tell him a joke. I also was playing The Price is Right, which The Price is Right, for me, made up game for the cemetery, is finding graves to give coins to. But it's just kind of fun, instead of like audience member approaching me like in a game show. It's just me approaching the graves and choosing and having fun. Sometimes I'll switch up that game with different values of coins, so like penny, nickel, dime, quarter type of thing. So I played that around him. I also gave him a coin because his gravestone said, tell me a joke. So there was at the same cemetery, there's a huge family plot fenced off by black stone, like it's solid like a wall, and it's got life-size lion statues in a way that's shaped like the Lion King, and there's trees made out of black stone like the Lion King. And right now, even though it's a family plot with room for a lot of people, it is only has one child. Pretty sure it's a boy because there's baseballs and stuff, but I don't remember the name. All that for a child. Can you believe that? And the child is the only one buried there at this point. So people do want you to remember. They do want you to see. I don't have TV. I've never had a cable bill in my name. Not really into that stuff, but I do see TV at friends' houses or in public or restaurants that have TV. And there was this show on talking about death and things like that. It said, with the history of cemeteries, that it's part of the reason is that people want to know that somebody's still here, or the person that died that is requesting in their will for a stone, that person wants to know that they're still here. And the truth is they are still here because their body's here or their cremated remains and stuff like that. So they want remembrance. They don't print those poems, have them etched out of stone only for themselves. Hi, Supreme Net Guide. So they want people to see. And also, a lot of the cemeteries, almost all, have something historical, if not historical plaques or historical rocks. Some plaques will be on a historical rocks. So there's reasons people want you to visit. There's a lot of memorials and things like that, or sections. There are cemeteries that have only one religious group in this section or only one ethnic group in this section, and that is not a joke. It has nothing to do with segregation or racism. Religious cemeteries like to split people up in that way, where they have the Latino or the Mexican community only buried in a certain area. And I'm not sure, but my impression is that they separate the Mexicans and the Latinos, the Spanish people or whatever, because it gives me the impression that they think that their faith is stronger than like a white person. And I'm not trying to be mean, but that's kind of like the impression they're giving. So in a religious way, there's segregation, like Catholic cemeteries. But there's also segregation because there might be a section of town or a city which will only have really a certain ethnic group. And in that way, you may not find a white person in the graveyard. You may not find a black person in the graveyard. There are national cemeteries and cemeteries that only have certain ethnic groups. An ethnic group not only could it be your heritage or ancestors or your bloodline. Ethnic group could also be that you were part of a society or a group, or you're a certain kind of person that has certain kind of beliefs or a religion. So there are cemeteries that will only have Bohemian people there. And Bohemia doesn't even exist anymore. It's Romania. So, they do have a special thing going on, and no one can even buy, at least in some of the national Bohemian cemeteries, you can't buy plots there anymore. They have to be handed down through wills, inheritances, or the plot never gets used. It's like this. Some cemeteries don't say, oh, you died, prove your bloodline. There's no time for that. What they do is they put people in a position where the plots are bought and they have to hand it down. And in that way, it includes the bloodline. Yeah, because somebody's sneaking on that's not part of the bloodline. Yeah, if a married couple inherits the plots, and then the person who doesn't have that heritage, a partner, would be buried with them. You're not just Bohemian because you get married to a Bohemian. So there are segregated areas. It does not have, maybe some have to do with race, but most of it, I don't take it as a racist thing. And the truth is, we're not all born equal. And even God does not treat us equal. God could bless somebody with $5 million today, and God would bless me with, a hot dog, whatever. The thing is, people are not equal, and that's why this stuff still happens. People when they're buried, often get treated like have a plaque from a society, or they might have a plaque from being a firefighter, or somebody might put out flags or banners for them, flowers and things. You get treated kind of like the impressions of the way you lived. You know, there are stones that have literal fishing poles and things like that, because this is how people get remembered and treated. Which is another expression, and some of it's creative or artistic expression for others to see, like myself. So even though there are a lot of suspicious or superstitious comments made daily, I just filter it as they're superstitious. And a lot of people are superstitious because the cemetery is not known. People are afraid of things that are dead. A lot of people assume that there's negative energy, or they're concerned about paranormal experiences. Maybe they feel like death is negative. Supreme Net God, do they replace headstones from the 1800s or 1900s with new ones, since they tend to get old and hard to read? There are volunteers, like especially retired people, that will buy a headstone and have it replaced. And not everybody actually gets permission from the cemetery. There are cemeteries that do not post on Google Maps or anywhere their phone number. The only places that have their phone number are the funeral homes. Also, family members that look up their ancestry, or maybe later on down the road, will buy a headstone and replace it. So somebody might have been born in 2000, but they're replacing a headstone to like an old relative that had died in 1900. And that does happen. Some stones get replaced because there's grants and societies, and some headstones do get replaced by the cemetery themselves. I think a lot of that are the privately owned cemeteries. So old headstones from the 1800s and 1900s have, most of them don't. And some that are not replaced will be mounted on some kind of bars on the back, you know, like for stability, or they'll have like the L brackets where this part's attached to something on the ground, or has a piece that's buried in the ground, and this part of the L bracket will actually be screwed into the stone. People will patch them up or take some kind of adhesive and piece it back together. Some people will piece it back together in a way where they pour a concrete slab, and then they put lay the pieces in it. So when it dries, it's actually flat in a way that they can stand it up, and it looks like the gravestone because it's standing up in that way. So there are a lot of ways to get replaced, but if you have to ask for permission, you might get denied. And I'm not trying to say break the law, but you know, a dead person can't sue anyway. On top of the fact that any family member in their right mind would appreciate somebody taking the time and the money, because nothing about replacing or repairing a gravestone is free. Even the adhesive's not free. And then there's the cost of your time. Even though you may not be getting paid for that time, you should always treat your time like as if, you know, it's worth whatever wages. So if you're out there spending 25 hours on a grave, you need to consider that person spent in your mind, like, also, oh, well, they added on like this much value to what they did besides the cost of the things. You know, just because you're doing it for free doesn't mean you don't consider how much you would charge for the same thing. I'm going to do something for somebody and I'm not going to charge them. Doesn't mean that I think I'm not worth it. It doesn't mean I don't want to get paid. It just means I'm doing something for somebody free. But I know how much my services are worth for doing that, you know, for doing that service. So it takes somebody who cares, period. Whether it's a grant or a person, private cemetery owner, somebody who randomly wants to do it without permission, a volunteer, an old relative or family member, all them, they have to have feelings and care. They have empathy, and they have empathy and feelings for somebody that's not around anymore. Why? Because it's important to be remembered, and other people, like, inside of themselves, understand the importance of being remembered. And those people that care about that don't want that person to be forgotten, whether they know that person or not. They don't want that person to be forgotten, or something moved inside of them spiritually or emotionally in a way where they feel moved, they feel inspired to replace it or repair it. And it could be there was some kind of soul connection between you and this person you never met. There could be, there's some type of, thing that you could relate to or familiarity that you're not consciously aware of, but in a spiritual way, there's a connection. So there's a lot of reasons why someone gets inspired or moved to replace or repair something or have feelings about something. For example, you might be inspired or moved to buy somebody dinner. And I'm not talking about in a romantic way. I'm talking about, like, you're not having dinner with them. You're not trying to flirt with them or get anything out of them. You just happen to tell the waitress that you're paying for the dinner, but you tell the waitress not to say who you are or whatever. So some of them get replaced, not all of them, and most of them don't. A lot of them fall down, and as they sink into the ground, or the lawn stuff, Supreme Net Goddess saw headstones that are from the 1600 to 1700s that are still around at their current state, and they're never replaced. It's interesting because you could have, if you see a stone from the 1600, 1700, 1800, they only use certain materials, okay? They're not using that hard stone. They were using like porous stuff that could get stained easy, or weathered easy. And so, if you see one that's that old, there could be a section, whether it's a weird shaped splotch or it's a whole section or one whole side or half a side plus the other side, that is the original color and original texture of the day that it was purchased. That happens as well. So parts of a stone could be in the original state. And those are really interesting to see because such a porous stone that the parts that have the mold and moss or whatever it is, I'm not sure, or dirt, those will be really saturated and dirty where other parts are in the original state. And so, like I was saying before, when they fall down, the lawn mower and things like that could run over it. There could be people that don't care. There could be visitors, walking on it and jumping on it, because they're just jerks. So a lot of them end up in the ground. And I guess when these older stones, especially the white ones, even if they're faded and stuff and they turn gray, it was white at some point. If they lay on the dirt and the ground, or in certain soils or environment, like weather related, they can turn into a sugary texture on the bottom, like sand, and start falling apart in that way. A lot of these stones will fall face down, so you won't see that. Hi, Ashton from Canada. That's so nice. When I think of Canada, I think of 3-day weekends. That's what I think about. Supreme Net God, the 1600 stones or 1700 ones look like they could just break at any moment. They're made out of a different material. And I'm not saying bump into it, and you shouldn't. But if you were to bump into it or touch it in any kind of way, it's so lightweight. And that's one reason why they used it was so lightweight. So enough wind and stuff like that, they do look frail. They do look like they could break, and they're easy to knock over and break. It's kind of like peanut brittle, like how they would break. On top of the fact that they're porous and they absorb things like a sponge. So that could also compromise, I don't know the word, but it could compromise like the quality of it and the stability of it. So the thing is, even when, oh, thanks, Ashton. That's so nice. That's so nice, Ashton. So these old stones, just because somebody works for a cemetery and or owns one, which cities often own cemeteries or towns, does not mean they care to replace or repair people that don't get regular visitors, like the old stones from the 1800s. Now, the state I'm in, Illinois, the earliest stones I've ever seen so far, and I've been to cemeteries all over the state, is a stone that the person had passed away, I think in 1795, 94, 95. That was only one. Most of the stones here were placed when they died in the 1800s, but they may have been born in the 1700s. The cemetery earlier today that I did live, Round Grove Cemetery, does have a stone with a married couple that were born in the 1700s. But if you go to Pennsylvania, you'll see gravestones from the 1600s where people were born in the 1500s. So it only goes so far back, just like the America we know today only goes so far back, obviously, to the Native Americans that were here. So I do have to get off of the video. Ashton, please watch the video from the beginning. I appreciate everybody's time. I hope to see you later, Monique. I didn't see you on the chat. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I am starting a Patreon. If you want to join my Patreon, as little as $5 a month, you can help pay for the flowers and the gas that it takes to do this channel. Thank you so much.